Nobody else was playing. The servers were dead. He was the last person left in a game the entire world had abandoned. Then the game spilled into reality. The same monsters he'd spent years studying started tearing through Seoul. And the hunters sent to stop them had no idea what they were dealing with. He did every attack pattern, every weakness, every hidden mechanic nobody else had bothered to learn. While professional hunters were dying to creatures they'd never seen before, he was farming them while the world scrambled to survive. He was quietly building something nobody could explain, hidden traits that weren't supposed to exist. A class the system had buried so deep no one knew to look for it. They thought being the last player of a dead game meant he'd wasted his life. It meant he had a 10-year head start. This is the story of how a broke guy with glasses and a mountain of instant noodle cups became the most dangerous person in a world that just turned into his game. Drop a like if you're already hooked and subscribe so you don't miss our next manhwa recap. Sunlight cuts across a vast desert canyon under scattered clouds. Bandaged warriors sweat in terror as a colossal serpent rises and roars that no one escapes its domain. Warriors advance through the dusty canyon with spears raised and grim determination. Character swings a sword with force, slicing sharply through the air. A man drives a blade into an opponent's chest, making the victim gasp as blood sprays outward. A bald man screams in agony while blood streams from his mouth and nose. Blood splatters downward against the pale sky, streaking the air violently. A blond man drives his sword into an opponent's skull, sending blood erupting upward as the victim freezes in shock. A character with glowing eyes stares intensely forward, gritting their teeth with fierce determination. Three warriors strain forward in a tight formation, their faces contorted in rage and exertion. A battered warrior stands swaying in the dust, trembling from exhaustion with head bowed. A white-haired man and four attackers lunge forward with furious expressions, bodies tensed for violent impact. Blood streams down a pale face, soaking the eyelashes of a wide eye staring in shock and pain. A character's mouth gapes open to reveal a void of blackness and blood, while a sharp sound echoes. A battered man pants heavily against the bright sky, his ragged breathing echoing in the air. A man dives downward through the air with arms outstretched, shouting as soldiers below look up in alarm. A fist clenches tightly around a bloody wooden weapon, striking downward with violent force. Glowing blue system windows announce the activation of hidden traits, including Heart of the Iron-Blooded Monarch and Weapon Master. A man screams as a sword pierces his chest, while enemies below shout that he is worn out and demand his death. The character screams with frantic eyes and bared teeth as blood trickles from his mouth in a surge of violent intensity. Glowing golden text announces the beginning of 13 hidden traits against a dark digital backdrop. Rain streaks down the windowpane beside empty beverage cans and instant noodle cups on a cluttered table. A figure with pink hair sits hunched in a gaming chair facing a glowing monitor in the dim room. A white-haired knight kneels in defeat with three swords protruding from their back beneath the words "Game Over." A man throws his head back and screams in anguish, tears streaming down his face. A figure sits slumped before a glowing computer desk, bathed in the cold blue light of the monitor. A man turns his head toward the window as snow drifts past the glass. A man with tousled hair stares intently forward, his expression tense and focused under dim lighting. A backlit keyboard, soda cans, and a drink cup sit on a desk under the glow of a monitor. A bespectacled man rests his chin on his hand and gazes downward with a weary expression. A young man stares forward with wide, intense eyes, his expression locked in shock or sudden realization. A login box floats over rolling green hills beneath a distant castle under a bright sky. A glowing blue banner displays a promise that clearing the game will grant one dream. A lone figure stands hunched under falling rain, observing that the game shows 0 online players if he is not logged in. Multiple chat messages float in a dark digital space as players complain about mechanics and declare they are quitting. A colossal horned beast roars with a glowing maw as warriors below raise their weapons in defiance. A cloaked figure stabs a screaming man in the chest, causing the victim's eyes to bulge in shock and agony. A cloaked knight stands over a bleeding, defeated foe lying motionless on the grass, sword still pointed downward. Silhouetted swords stand upright in the ground beneath a blood-red sky. A hand crushes a cigarette butt in an ashtray filled with extinguished stubs as smoke curls upward. A bespectacled man rests his cheek on his hand, his expression weary and contemplative as he gazes downward. A white-haired armored figure kneels with head bowed as 4 swords pierce their back, while a voice exclaims these were unique items. A man stares intently to the side, his expression tense and focused against a glowing teal background. A white-haired figure in armor kneels with head bowed as blue digital rain falls around them. A close-up of a character's eye behind thick-rimmed glasses reflects a small figure amidst a surrounding blue glow. A huddled group of figures is impaled by multiple swords amidst cascading blue digital numbers and impact sounds. Glowing golden icons of talents float against a starry blue background, while text explains that SB investment results in gentler growth curves. A man stares in horror at a monitor displaying "Game Over" as the armored knight slumps lifelessly against a tree. A man grins nervously while sweating as a glowing blue number sequence streaks past him. A hand grips a computer mouse and slides it across the surface with swift motion. A cursor arrow hovers over a blue digital button labeled "Random" on a striped screen. A bespectacled man points forward while holding a camera, his expression confident and slightly smug. A thumb presses down on a device with a red button, while a bright light flares from its side. A character's hands grip a disposable cup with a lid and straw, fingers curled tightly around the sleeve. A bespectacled young man stares upward with wide, panicked eyes and an open mouth, shouting that he cannot believe what is happening. A woman declares that she cannot date someone with no money forever, her expression cold and final. A woman stares forward with narrowed eyes and a tight mouth, her expression sharp with silent resolve. A bespectacled young man stares forward with a nervous expression, sweat beading on his cheek as he begins to speak. A pale, elongated arm extends stiffly from a dark shape against a muted background. A woman lowers her gaze and closes her eyes as a single tear falls down her cheek in sorrow. A pair of dark eyes stares forward with quiet intensity, their gaze fixed and unblinking. A boy with messy white hair bows his head in shame or sorrow, while a speech bubble hovers above him silently. A woman leans forward toward a seated man while speaking, her expression soft and focused as she places a hand on his chair. A man with tousled blonde hair and dark sunglasses stares forward with a slight, knowing smirk. A woman walks away with a tearful expression, while a man sits slumped at the table in the background. A lone man sits hunched at a round table under a single spotlight in a dim, empty room. A young man sits hunched at a desk in a dim room, his expression tense and focused as he types. A man with messy hair and glasses stares intently forward, his jaw set with quiet resolve. A black cursor hovers over a blue digital button labeled random on a striped screen. A man stares upward with a tense, skeptical expression while holding a device with a red button. A character presses their palm firmly against a dark surface, sending out sharp motion lines as the air shudders with sudden force. A tiny figure lies submerged in a glowing blue pool as radiant energy erupts upward, consuming 100 SP to rearrange stats. A character with light hair and thick black glasses stares intently, their mouth slightly open as if speaking. A man with light hair stares at a glowing screen displaying that a hidden piece has been activated, his hand gripping an object. A glowing blue holographic interface announces that the singularity has been satisfied and an invitation to Pangenia has been granted. A figure in a hooded jacket lunges forward with glowing blue energy, shattering surrounding structures as if moving at impossible speed. A man stares forward with wide, shocked eyes and a tense expression as sweat beads form on his face. A cavernous maw gapes wide in a red abyss, roaring that all worlds created by a wicked god shall burn to ashes. A man in a green shirt doubles over in pain and cries out as red laser beams crisscross the air around him. A man screams in anguish while clutching his head, his face contorted in agony as red energy crackles above him. A close-up of a character's face framed by dark-rimmed glasses is bathed in warm pink light casting soft shadows. A white-haired character's head tilts sharply as blood sprays across the crimson background, while a sharp impact sound echoes. A man in pajamas collapses forward onto a cluttered desk, his body rigid with shock as he stares at the overturned fan. A figure lies face down on the floor before a glowing desk, while text indicates a loud noise filled the room. A glowing red digital interface displays a poetic invocation about a being of creation and destruction amidst swirling data streams. A red holographic message declares that happiness may be found in Pangenia. A white-haired attacker swings a blade toward a terrified man whose face contorts in shock as he braces for impact. A man in a white turban grips the arm of a kneeling youth while shouting in alarm as the boy turns with wide eyes. A man with dark hair and glasses grits his teeth in visible distress, sweat beading on his cheek as he stares forward. A scaled, segmented tail drags heavily across the ground, while armored boots stride forward with purpose. A man lunges forward with a whip, cracking it through the air as dust kicks up around fleeing figures. A man's eyes widen in terror as stone beasts advance, while his chained fists tremble with suppressed rage. A white-cloaked figure delivers a devastating kick to the back of a dark-haired man, sending him flying forward with a scream. A chained man collapses to the ground in pain as a guard raises a whip and shouts that he will not let him escape. A man with sweat on his face stares intensely downward, his expression strained and focused. Bright sunlight shines through scattered white clouds in a clear blue sky. Three figures step forward in unison, their feet pressing into the dusty ground with rhythmic thuds. A man with tousled brown hair and dirt on his face stands rigidly, fists clenched as a metallic grinding sound echoes. A brown-haired man stands with his head bowed while others gaze at a distant monstrous figure as someone declares it was the monster from Pangenia. A character bares their teeth in a sharp, aggressive grin, their expression tense with suppressed anger. A man in a torn shirt and chains stares at a glowing blue interface displaying stats, his expression sharp with realization. A young man with blue hair stares intently forward, his face slick with sweat and his expression tense with apprehension. A translucent blue interface displays character stats and talents while warning that Pangea's collapse has reached 6.12%. A vast army of prisoners kneels in a dusty arena under the blazing sun as a glowing blue interface hovers before them. A young man with tousled gray hair stares forward in shock, sweat beading on his flushed face as he gasps that this could not be happening. The young man stares intently at a glowing blue holographic interface displaying his stats and talents alongside warnings about Pangea's collapse. A translucent blue interface displays lists of attributes and active hidden traits above a single visible eye. The central figure crouches defensively while surrounding men recoil in shock as a collective exclamation of surprise erupts. The young man stares forward with a shocked expression, sweat beading on his face as tension surges outward. The bald warrior stands rigid with sword drawn, his eyes wide and sweat beading on his brow as he glares toward an unseen threat. Dust and debris surge upward in a violent plume, signaling an explosive impact just beyond frame. A silhouetted figure stands atop a pack of snarling, monstrous beasts roaring in unison under a bright sky. A woman stands firmly atop a structure, gripping a long staff while shouting that one must stay sharp if they space out. A young man stares forward in wide-eyed shock, his face flushed and trembling as a violent impact strikes the side of his head. A character with dark hair and red eyes stares forward with intense focus, their expression hardening as tension radiates from their stillness. The main quest has been generated. The man in the torn shirt stares at a floating blue notification, declaring that the main quest has been generated, while onlookers react with shock. A translucent blue system window displays main quest 1 demanding survival, warning that failure results in death for both physical bodies. The young man stares forward with wide, trembling eyes and a bead of sweat rolling down his temple, frozen in shock. A dense volley of arrows streaks upward through the air, accompanied by sharp impact sounds. Arrows pierce through screaming soldiers as they stagger and collapse in a chaotic barrage, blood spraying from their wounds. The man stands motionless amidst the chaos, flanked by enemies who scream in agony as they are violently slashed apart. The young man with disheveled hair stares in wide-eyed horror, his face smeared with dirt and blood, as he grits his teeth against the suffocating red darkness. The character's wide, trembling eyes stare forward in sheer panic as sweat drips down their face against a suffocating red backdrop. A man stands with his back turned as swirling blue energy surrounds him, and a system message announces that the hidden trait heart of the iron-blooded monarch has been activated. A single tear rolls down the character's cheek as their eye glistens with unshed sorrow. A masked figure in white bandages strikes with a blade, sending blood spraying as the wounded enemies scream in agony. A man with brown hair looks down at a bandaged figure, lying motionless on the floor, blood pooling around their body. A man kneels beside a fallen comrade on the battlefield, while another figure sprints past as urgency emphasizes the scattered bodies. A man with brown hair lunges forward while gripping a sword in his right hand, his body tensed for combat. A hand grips the hilt of a glowing blue sword as it is drawn from its wooden scabbard with a sharp metallic sound. A man lunges forward with a glowing sword, his face contorted in exertion as cyan energy streaks around him. The hooded assassin lunges downward with a dagger aimed at the brown-haired man, who braces his sword to block the strike. A man in white delivers a blazing kick that sends his opponent flying backward through streaks of blue light. A figure recoils violently from a glowing teal strike that tears through their white garment, blood spraying as the impact shatters the air. A white-haired man lunges forward with a glowing sword raised high, surrounded by swirling blue energy as he grimaces with fierce determination. A glowing blue interface announces that the hidden trait Weapon Master has been activated. A man with brown hair stares forward with glowing blue eyes as ethereal blue energy swirls around his face, his expression grim and resolute. Multiple figures sprint forward in a frantic rush, kicking up dust and debris. A man stares ahead with narrowed eyes and a grim mouth, radiating fierce determination. A bald man thrusts his weapon forward, shouting that he's addressing a little slave. A shirtless man swings his staff downward to crush an opponent's raised blade. A man recoils with a pained cry as his spear flies upward from the impact. A hand grips a dark staff so tightly, the wood creaks under pressure. A hooded figure swings an axe downward, striking a glowing barrier that erupts in light. A masked figure lunges forward with a drawn weapon and narrowed eyes. A man recoils in shock as a massive glowing blade slices past him. A man stares upward with gritted teeth and wide eyes, confronting the dark sky. Several glowing battle axes float suspended against a starry void, humming with energy. 3 glowing axes and a sword hover against a starry void, humming with blue energy. A warrior clashes his sword against an opponent's blade, sending a blinding burst of sparks. A glowing blue energy line erupts from the character's chest and trails down their torso. Character's wide eye stares forward with shock and fear as tears well up. A man lunges forward with an extended arm, driving through an unseen barrier. A masked figure grits their teeth and roars in pain, while blood splatters across their face. A hand grips a halberd tightly as it swings downward with a sharp whoosh. A man swings a staff downward with fierce intensity, striking the bandaged figure before him. Blood sprays upward from the sandy ground while an off-panel voice shouts in pain. A battered warrior stands panting between two looming figures after a fierce struggle. Blonde-haired man stares forward with narrowed eyes and a tight jaw, bracing himself. Three masked men lunge forward with weapons drawn and eyes wide with shock. A man grips a massive sword with his head bowed as bright light flares from the edge. A man tilts his head downward, staring intently at something below him with narrowed eyes. A wooden beam wedges tightly between two stone blocks, holding them apart with visible pressure. A lone man stands amid fallen soldiers, facing an advancing army under a hazy sky. A lone figure kneels on a crimson carpet before three silhouetted guards in a throne room. A dark-haired woman lounges on an ornate throne and asks if the demon world failed. A shadowed figure glares with glowing red eyes while radiating menace and silent threat. A young woman lowers her head in quiet resignation with a somber expression. A shadowed figure observes a woman on a throne as she warns that fools would blame them. A figure bows their head low while commanding the elimination of all stragglers. A colossal armored figure looms over a distant character and demands that connections be severed. A woman glares downward with narrowed eyes and a jaw clenched in suppressed anger. A barefoot presses into the floor with a soft squelch as tension grows heavy. A character lowers their head with half-lidded eyes as a single tear slips down their cheek. Red light streams through arched windows as a voice demands that failure is not an option. A woman stands in profile against a bright sky with a calm and distant expression. A figure observes a bandaged man crawling on the sandy ground before them. A figure stands atop a jagged ridge while someone off-panel murmurs Girl stares upward with wide, startled eyes and parted lips. Bloodied figures lie motionless on the dusty ground in the aftermath of violence. A man drives a sword into an enemy's chest as the victim slumps lifelessly beneath him. A character's mouth gapes open in shock as they gasp for air with sweat dripping down. A blue system notification declares that the level has increased to 2. The man stares forward with intense eyes and a grim expression while breathing heavily. A system notification declares that health and mana have been restored. A blue interface displays the message that fatigue has been removed. A muscular man stands firm with weapons in both hands as steam rises around him. A muscular man strains forward in battle formation alongside similarly armed warriors. A hooded figure and a screaming man gaze upward as the man stammers that she was the princess. A young man stares forward with fearful eyes as a single large eye looms above him. Isabella von Dersian stands firmly atop a stone surface and declares her name. Isabella von Dersian stands motionless within a status screen and refuses to confirm any stats. A young man stares forward with a tense expression as sweat beads form on his temple. Three hooded figures stand together as narration states that the gap in levels could hardly be overturned. A man with glowing red eyes stares intensely, bathed in ominous crimson light. A man charges forward while gripping a sword and an axe, preparing for combat. A translucent figure stands behind text declaring she cannot leave due to a curse. The young man stares forward with wide eyes, radiating shock. A man grips a sword and axe while facing the towering leg of an approaching figure. A woman stares forward with narrowed eyes as a sharp shadow falls across her face. A woman stands confidently in a green aura while declaring that the enemy is to die now. A young man stares sharply to the side with quiet determination as warm light fades. A man sits hunched over a desk, typing intently as a monitor illuminates his focused expression. A character's eye narrows sharply under heavy shadow, conveying intense focus. A dark-clad figure is struck mid-stride and sent flying backward through the air. A figure lunges forward with glowing red eyes as a bright slash erupts from impact. A character smiles broadly with a grin suggesting confidence or amusement. A man stands rigid as a dagger pierces his chest and blood sprays outward. A character exhales sharply as a blade slices horizontally through the air beside their neck. A woman thrusts a glowing blade forward with intense focus and demands the enemy step back. A man and woman face each other inches apart with tense and breathless expression. A single tear rolls down a character's cheek as their eye remains half-lidded. Crumbling stone ruins stand under a hazy sky with the sun glowing faintly behind them. A man grips the shoulder of a dark-haired figure and offers to help lift the queen's curse. A young woman stares forward in stunned silence as a single tear rolls down her cheek. A man stands before a kneeling woman as she exclaims that it worked. A character's intense eye stares forward beneath a furrowed brow, radiating sharp focus. A hand extends upward through radiant light as narration states removing the curse required the blessing of stars. A woman bows her head with trembling shoulders while jagged lines radiate from her body. A man with a stern expression stands before a figure and states that the matter is simple. Isabella von Dersian stands in a ruined landscape with interface text displaying her name and level. A woman stares intensely at a blonde man and declares that he chose the wrong starting point. A white bird soars over layered mountains as narration declares this the end of the game. A white bird stands motionless inside a golden cage, as narration reveals the speaker left her there. Black-haired woman asks the surprised young man for his name with her back turned. A man stares forward with intense eyes and a stern expression, his mouth slightly open. A light blue background displays white text announcing that the character's name has been set. A man stares intensely at a woman who looks away in silence. A woman strides forward with a sharp whoosh, while a man watches intently from behind. A woman walks away from a blonde man, while an empty speech bubble hovers above her head. A character stares downward with a somber expression against a vivid red background. A muscular man faces a woman walking away between guards, while one declares he was an honored guest. A muscular man stumbles forward with his head bowed. Glowing system windows announce upgraded rewards, while the constellation of battle complements performance. Character bows their head low as a purple impact sound flashes above. Glowing system windows announce the acquisition of the broken piece of the golden scale and other items. A man slams backward into a wooden wall with force, sending splinters flying. A character's eye narrows slightly under soft light as their expression tightens with quiet intensity. A blue interface displays a total of 220 points and states the result will be added to the Hall of Fame. A full moon shines through drifting clouds above the silhouetted spires of a castle. A man sits in a bathtub while 3 translucent screens float before him. A shirtless man leans forward to gaze at interface panels displaying item description. A shirtless man sits in a bath and looks toward something off-panel with a neutral expression. A glowing interface displays item details for a broken golden scale fragment. A man sits in a bathtub with wide eyes as 3 women stand silently in the doorway. 3 women stand side by side holding folded towels and smiling gently. Bare-chested man turns his head sharply with wide eyes and a slightly open mouth. Hands grip and pull apart a fleshy mass, tearing it open with wet squelching sounds. 3 women wash feet with sponges and soap while narration identifies them as chambermaids. A shirtless young man closes his eyes tightly and demands to keep calm. A man stares forward with a serious expression and an unwavering gaze. A woman gasps in shock and clutches at the fabric of her dress. A man stares at a glowing status window and shouts for it to appear. A young man stares forward with a stern expression as if bracing for confrontation. A digital display lists player rankings while a character demands to know what is happening. A man stares at holographic screens displaying survival quest rankings as a sharp chime echoes. A system interface announces the Hall of Fame opening and reveals that logging out is now unlocked. A shirtless man sits in water with a startled expression as he stares at a woman's back. A young man stares forward in wide-eyed shock as if he just heard something impossible. A hooded figure grips an armored arm and questions whether others vanished because they were summoned. A wide eye stares forward with shock and alarm as speed lines radiate outward. A system message informs the recipient that ranking in survival has unlocked the logout feature. A shirtless man leans forward with an intense gaze fixed ahead. A shirtless man lunges forward with an outstretched hand and demands the women join him with the stars. A shirtless man glares forward with narrowed eyes and gritted teeth as steam rises around him. A woman stares forward with wide eyes and parted lips, frozen in sudden shock. Wooden doors stand slightly ajar in a dim room while a creaking noise echoes through the space. Wooden paneling stands bathed in warm sunlight with soft shadows drifting across the surface. A shirtless young man turns his head over his shoulder with a startled expression. A shirtless man stands beside a circular pool of rippling water and speaks while looking down. A man reaches forward to press a floating button labeled logout. A hand presses a glowing button labeled logout accompanied by a crisp electronic click. A young man closes his eyes as digital data streams across his face, while a system message commands safety. A glowing tip warns that character death meant real-life death, while a logout complete message appears. A glowing monitor illuminates a dim desk cluttered with a keyboard and scattered cups. Sunlight floods through a sliding glass door framed by dark curtains. Buildings stand amid rising flames and falling embers under a smoke-choked sky. Civilians scream and flee in panic as a monstrous silhouette looms over burning streets. A dark creature with glowing red eyes emerges from roaring flames as embers swirl violently. An emergency disaster message flashes on a smartphone screen, warning of an unknown attack in Seoul. The man with glasses grips the ledge and stares upward in panic as a voice demands he look. A man watches from a window as a monstrous creature thrashes violently. A monstrous beast lunges forward with its massive jaws wide open and roars aggressively. A man in a green tracksuit scrambles backward across the floor and exclaims "Whoa." A man grits his teeth in frustration and demands to know who gave them permission to enter. A heavy boot stomps down with force onto a small golden object, crushing it underfoot. A curved golden object rests on a white surface while a red sound effect appears below it. Shirtless men sprint across a barren valley toward distant figures, while a system window flashes game instructions right in their faces. A man lunges forward, teeth gritted, as glowing energy swirls violently around his outstretched hand. A white-haired man drives his sword downward in a furious arc, while spectral energy erupts around him. A woman looms over a weeping man who stands below her with his eyes squeezed shut. The bespectacled man stares forward, eyes trembling and mouth grimacing, radiating overwhelming terror. A man in a wheelchair jolts upright, confusion twisting his features as he demands to know where he is. A standing fan hums in the quiet room, while an unseen voice wonders if they just fell asleep. The man presses his hand to his mouth, muttering that getting sucked into a game makes absolutely no sense. A character jolts awake at their desk, knocking over a pouch of gold coins while cursing the vivid nightmare. A man in glasses recoils in horror as another person shoves a glowing golden card in his face, demanding if any of this is real. A character in a green shirt suddenly realizes they forgot about the game and screams in pure panic. A computer screen displays an error message stating the page does not exist, while a speech bubble screams silent frustration. A character with purple hair stares forward in shock, realizing the game homepage has completely vanished. A character internally stammers as they arrive, jagged lines streaking downward around them in a blur of motion. A bespectacled young man recoils in sheer terror, screaming that it's a monster while begging for help. A man recoils in terror as a giant insect lunges toward him, his scream tearing through the air in sheer panic. A bloodied man lies sprawled on shattered ground, screaming for someone to run amid flying debris. A uniformed officer shouts into his radio that it's an emergency, while other officers fire wildly at a giant mantis-like monster. A smartphone screen displays an emergency monster alert with evacuation instructions, vibrating urgently against the chaos. A man with glasses stares upward in wide-eyed shock, demanding what the hell is happening amid swirling mist. A man peers from a window as a clawed monster lunges upward, demanding why monsters from Pangania have appeared here. A character in blue pants drops a golden object onto the floor, thinking that this cannot possibly be true. A man with glasses questions whether the boundary between reality and Pangania has broken, while a system alert warns of destruction progress. A young man with glasses clenches his teeth in panic, desperately wondering what he should do next. A character presses their thumbs down onto a golden curved artifact that vibrates and emits a resonant hum. A man in a green tracksuit scrambles back on the floor in terror, realizing game monsters are now roaming freely in reality. A character's eye widens in sudden alarm as a dark vertical shape slices across their vision. A young man in a green tracksuit slams his bare foot down, realizing that game items might actually function in reality. A young man holds a glowing orb with both hands, straining as he channels energy toward floating holographic labels. A hand grips a glowing orange cube marked with a spiral emblem, while the holder curses over not knowing how to activate it. A man with glasses stares upward in shock as a system notification details the activation of a reality synchronizing item. A system notification explains that a fragment allows synchronization between realities, while a narrator doubts their real-world self could ever fight monsters. A young man with glasses grits his teeth and shouts that synchronization is on as a pink-haired woman floats behind him. A glowing red hexagonal fragment bearing a golden spiral symbol floats in midair, while a digital interface declares 24 hours remain. A figure lies motionless in a pool of blood on the shattered street as another person's foot steps forward with heavy impact. A woman sprints through a burning city, clutching a child tightly to her chest and screaming in terror. A woman hugs a child and says daddy will come soon, while the child asks why he is not coming yet. A man carries a terrified girl in his arms as massive stone blocks crash down around them. Red onomatopoeia for a crash explodes across the screen as rocks fly through the air. A young girl in a pink dress sits trembling on cracked earth, whispering no while debris floats in the hazy air. A young girl screams for her mommy while kneeling beside a wounded man who insists he is fine and urges her to go. A woman in a business suit runs forward with a panicked expression, shouting to know if someone is all right. A dying mother collapses in a spreading pool of her own blood, pleading with a young lady to take her child. A young girl reaches toward a bleeding figure and apologizes while promising to protect her in the ruined landscape. A character's wide brown eye stares in shock against a crimson background as tension hangs heavy in the air. A short-haired girl in a school uniform gets knocked backward midair by a large green monster's strike and gasps. A girl stands with her back turned, gazing up at a swirling vortex of dark energy while wondering if this is how she dies. A cloaked figure dashes through a storm of ice shards while massive fists crash down around them. A character's eyes glow with intense blue energy as streaks of light slash across their face. A man braces himself against a blinding explosion of red and white light while his body recoils from the force. The character's eye trembles violently in terror as the sound of shuddering fills the air around them. A woman clutches a child tightly as debris explodes around them, screaming that she survived. A young man with brown hair stands in profile as dark ash-like fragments float around him, while an unseen observer wonders who he is. A massive black serpent lunges forward with glowing red eyes, striking toward two distant figures while a young woman screams in terror. A massive dark energy vortex erupts behind a standing figure as someone shouts a warning. A terrified woman crouches on the ground, clutching her chest in shock as dark spikes erupt around her. A lone warrior stands before a colossal nine-headed dragon, demanding in disbelief whether the creature truly possesses 9 heads. A dark mountain peak stands silent against a pale sky as a sudden thud echoes through the air. A man perches atop a massive stone beast, commanding it to stay still, while a terrified woman below clutches another person tightly. A girl stares with wide, trembling eyes and a forced grin, asking if she is dreaming. A small girl in a purple dress leaps forward with arms outstretched toward a fallen figure and shouts "Mommy." A girl with short brown hair stands in the foreground, tears streaking her face as she watches a chaotic scene unfold. A woman's eyes widen in shock as a jagged sound effect erupts beside her face and her breath catches. A massive cracked stone creature with glowing red eyes collapses in a whirlwind of debris as an unseen observer wonders who he is. Monsters appear worldwide as a man screams beneath the collapsing Eiffel Tower, while cities burn and civilization crumbles. A dark-haired warrior roars mid-swing with his sword, lunging forward as a blonde warrior beside him charges into battle. A translucent blue energy field envelops the shoulder and collar of a uniform, shimmering with floating bubbles. A young man stands atop rubble, brandishing a glowing blue sword aloft and shouting that he will protect everyone. A hand holds a phone displaying a man raising his fist and shouting that they must unite their strength while an unseen person clicks their tongue. A man lounges barefoot on a modern sofa, sipping from a cup while muttering that idiots are wasting their fragments. Massacre stands motionless with his head bowed, as a voice confirms that reality and Pangaea are beginning to merge. A hand clenches into a fist with visible force, while an unseen voice declares that those who obtain more fragments will become protagonists. A blue holographic quest window displays updated survival rankings with Randolph in first place as a narrator calls the top score absurdly high. A scoreboard declares Randolph first with 220 points, while a jagged speech bubble questions whether this Randolph is Phantom. A text box declares the subject's alias as Phantom, also known as Ghost. A white-haired armored figure kneels with hands clasped over a sword hilt as narration explains he formed the Demon Realm expedition. A cloaked figure lies face down on the ground as blood sprays across the floor, while narration states it ended in complete failure. Bold red text declares him the undisputed top player of Pangaea, radiating intensity against a stark white background. A man stares at a glowing blue interface with narrowed eyes. As narration explains, he must have been summoned the moment the expedition failed. Blue light streaks downward with a whooshing sound, as narration explains that talents carried over despite appearance and equipment being reset. A scarred man grins with narrowed eyes, saying he understands why someone received such a high score. A blonde character exhales sharply with eyes half-lidded as a soft sound effect drifts near his temple. A shirtless man rises from a bubbling bathtub with a weary expression, as narration explains monsters and players now exist in reality. A man with dark hair narrows his eyes in cold realization as he observes that the situation is becoming clearer. A white-haired warrior lies face down on the ground with 3 swords embedded in his back as narration recounts nearly reaching the game's ending. A bare leg emerges from the water as a character wonders if all interfering variables are players summoned just like them. A jagged black oval frames a narrator's voice describing players who opposed the ending or viewed the speaker as a rival. A masked muscular man charges forward with clenched fists while recalling that people targeted him back then and might still be doing so. Ornate doors stand beneath a vaulted ceiling as the speaker declares they can no longer hide after logging out. A seated figure faces a distant man bursting through ornate doors in alarm, while declaring internally that he must grow stronger quickly. A woman sits rigidly in a high-backed throne and demands to know if someone has finished talking with the stars. A woman with dark hair smiles confidently while declaring that she has come to keep her promise as another voice responds with approval. A dark-haired woman extends her gloved hand forward and asks what the condition is as a blonde woman states she has one condition. A hand grips a ledge in the foreground as 2 women stand with their backs turned inside a sunlit room, unaware of being watched. A character with wide red eyes stares in shock and demands to be taken to the sanctuary by Isabella. A young man in a torn gray shirt stands with arms crossed, calling the sanctuary insane while declaring his desired class is tied to the second main quest. A man with dark hair turns his head slightly and states that there is a star there, as another voice declares it can be obtained here. A glowing blue system window displays main quest 2 instructions for obtaining a class in the sanctuary. Scattered clouds drift above crumbling stone ruins under the cold gaze of a full moon. Blood drips from a boot onto the stone while motionless bodies litter the vast, silent hall. The woman slashes her own shoulder and grits her teeth as blood sprays outward in a violent arc. The shirtless man stares in pure shock at a glowing figure standing ominously in the dark doorway. A character freezes with wide, trembling eyes and parted lips as fear completely takes hold of their face. The muscular man stands with a stern expression, locking his gaze forward with unbreakable focus. The horned man smiles menacingly and demands silence from anyone foolish enough to interrupt him. The man faces the woman on the throne who asks if the star is finally there. The angry man grits his teeth and narrows his eyes into a sharp, killing glare. The girl gasps in shock, eyes wide and mouth open, as sudden alarm strikes her like lightning. A tongue extends and makes wet, adhesive contact with a dark red surface. The brown-haired man stares forward tensely, while the woman in tactical gear stands silently behind him. A lone figure stands at the base of a staircase leading straight into a misty, unknown abyss. Two figures walk up a striped staircase toward a platform surrounded by swirling purple mist. An intense character stares with a bead of sweat rolling down their cheek as energy swirls violently around them. The blonde man sits slumped in the foreground, while the dark-haired woman stands silently behind him. A stepping foot kicks up dust and debris as it lands with crushing force on the floor. Jagged stone shards fly through swirling mist, while a system message declares the quest ended immediately. The determined man narrows his eye and sets his jaw, while a blue interface hovers ominously above. Purple energy crackles against a dark stone surface and sends small fragments flying into the air. The red-eyed girl stares upward in shock as purple energy swirls violently around her. Jagged stone pillars rise from a swirling vortex as dark fabric whips violently through the air. The woman closes her eyes and smiles serenely as wind sweeps through her hair. The brown-haired man grabs the woman's shoulder and remarks that even a star-bearer can make mistakes. The red-eyed girl grins menacingly and bares her sharp teeth in a cruel, predatory smile. The dark-haired woman points accusingly forward and demands to know exactly who he is. The woman stares in wide-eyed shock and admits she had no idea the other was this kind of character. The woman grits her teeth in frustration while clutching a small object with barely contained rage. The woman stands with arms crossed and tells the crouching man to get on her back. The screaming girl lets out a guttural roar of fury with wide eyes and bared teeth. A resolute man hardens his expression and fixes his gaze on something unseen but deadly. Closed eye trembles slightly as a single sweat drop rolls down a flushed cheek. A rigid man stands with a woman clinging to his back in a chokehold while he grips her arms tight. A heavy foot slams down onto a wooden floor with explosive force and cracks the surface instantly. A sprinting figure races across a desolate plain toward distant pillars while kicking up clouds of dust. A red-marked figure slams into the blonde-haired person from behind and sends them stumbling forward. A red-streaked figure tumbles downward through a purple void with limbs flailing rapidly. A shocked character's wide eye glows cyan as they react to an unseen, looming threat. An observing character watches glowing blue text while narration states that a hidden trait allowed one to see. The carrying man moves forward with intense speed while hauling a woman over his shoulder. The black-haired woman stares in flustered shock at the man looming over her with sweat beading on her face. The grinning man bares his teeth in a sinister grin and emits a low, dangerous hiss. The gripping man grabs another by the hair and demands if they truly wish to die. The carrying man leaps up stone steps while carrying a woman on his back with muscles tensed for war. The blue-haired man stares forward with wide, crimson eyes while the blonde man presses close beside him. An ascending figure climbs glowing white stairs as crackling blue lightning arcs wildly around them. A hand channels crackling blue energy through its palm and sends arcs of lightning spiraling outward. Two figures brace against a violent surge of energy while an unseen voice declares they have never seen him like this. Jagged bolts of blue lightning crackle across the background and illuminate floating Korean characters. Two motionless figures lie on a grassy slope as glowing blue energy swirls protectively around them. A stoic man narrows his eye with intensity as soft petals drift past his face. Jagged stone shards surround a deep, void-like black fissure tearing through the rock face. A glowing red orb hovers within a jagged tear in stone as the surrounding rock fractures outward. Jagged rock formations rise against a crimson sky as debris scatters through the air with violent force. Three figures surge forward in a vertical line while wreathed in crackling red energy. A colossal stone figure stands amidst swirling crimson flames with a glowing red eye and an incandescent chest emblem. The bearded man gazes upward with intense focus and an unreadable expression. The brown-haired man stands in the background with arms crossed and a confident smirk. Two figures stand in the distance as massive stone hands crash down around them. A stone-skinned figure clenches its fist with explosive force and roars in absolute fury. The tactical woman braces her stance as a massive stone golem crashes down toward her. A grinning character bares their teeth in a wide, menacing grin with dark strands falling across their face. A stone tower shatters under immense force as glowing cracks race across its surface. The flowing-haired woman raises her arm as a colossal stone monster shatters into debris amid a massive explosion. The red-eyed girl stares sharply to the side with a tense expression as shattered fragments float around her. A falling figure falls backward through the air while wielding dual swords and shattering large stone blocks. A roaring stone figure unleashes a burst of golden energy as its body splits apart under the sheer force. A leaping figure vaults over a colossal stone arm as it smashes into the ground and shatters boulders. The confident man grins with arms crossed as debris floats around him against a bright sky. Glowing white lines slice through a cracked stone surface with a red orb embedded inside. A lunging figure surges forward with explosive force and shatters the ground beneath them. The standing man turns his back as debris explodes outward from a blue system window. The shocked young man stares forward with mouth slightly open as a blue interface offers the Golem Maker class. A glowing cyan magical circle pulses with geometric symbols against a dark blue background. The brown-haired man stares at a glowing blue interface offering the Golem Maker class with options to accept or decline. Dark tendrils writhe across a purple-hued landscape as an unseen presence declares the class grantor is something else entirely. The poised woman stands with a knife in hand and a sharp, alert gaze. A lone figure stands on a desolate, blood-splattered plain as dark purple energy swirls ominously around them. Jagged mountain peaks rise under a swirling purple sky as glowing cracks trace their slopes. A crouching man lowers himself with intense focus while purple flowers bloom in the background. A colossal serpent looms over two figures on a grassy field as a voice calls out to the greater god. Our boy crouches low in the field, shadowy tendrils framing him like a death sentence. A colossal serpent looms over two figures as a voice identifies it as the greater god guarding the star. Sweat beads on our hero's cheek as he stares upward, the air thick enough to choke on. The colossal serpent dominates the fiery sky, purple energy crackling around its massive form like a storm waiting to break. Our boy smiles confidently as dark energy streaks across the sky, and an armored woman watches from the sidelines. A dark energy beast lunges forward with a blinding explosion, while a voice screams that the target never attacked first. A massive force hurls the dark-clad woman backward as she shrieks that something is coming straight for her. The black and red-haired woman collapses to her knees bleeding, sharp wind slashing through the air behind her like invisible blades. Our guy sweats through a strained smile, glancing sideways before exhaling sharply like he's trying to hold his soul together. Something slams into the top of the black and pink-haired girl's head, leaving her wide-eyed and gritting her teeth against the impact. One man blurts out in confusion that he remembers the colossal serpent as a friendly guide who helped lead the way. A massive serpentine head roars in a guttural shriek, dark particles scattering around its open maw like ash from a funeral pyre. The dark-haired girl grins wildly as a figure in tactical gear leaps upward through an exploding stone wall. A dark curved blade slices through the air, detonating with explosive force and crushing impact. The colossal snake strikes downward with terrifying force, shattering the ground as violent energy explodes outward in every direction. A figure in black sprints across a blood-splattered field, while a massive red energy wave erupts behind them like a tidal wave of fire. A wide human eye stares in shock, a single bead of sweat falling as a sudden realization hits hard. The massive enchanted serpent rises menacingly as narration explains its body grows and gains power according to Dramut's lore. The white-haired warrior kneels with hands clasped around a sword hilt, recalling a past life just before darkness consumes him completely. A cloaked figure stands silhouetted against a radiant sky, while a distant shape streaks across the light above like a falling star. Our guy stares forward with narrowed eyes and a clenched fist, radiating tense determination that could cut glass. The young man freezes mid-reaction, a wide, startled eye peeking out from behind his tousled hair. Debris streaks past the black-haired figure as they get violently thrown backward through the air like a ragdoll. The black and red-haired woman screams in pain, collapsing forward and clutching a dagger as blood sprays from her wounds. The dark-haired girl gasps in distress, wide tearful eyes burning as she grits her teeth against overwhelming emotion. A character lies face down in a pool of blood, wondering internally if hearing the star-bearer was a fatal mistake. A character grits their teeth and squeezes their eyes shut as a massive blade halts abruptly just inches above them. A lone figure falls through a swirling vortex of light, while massive dark tentacles surge upward with chaotic energy. A reptilian eye with a vertical red pupil glows intensely beneath scaled lids, radiating menace and ancient power. The blond man stands motionless, his face obscured by shadow while sweat drips from his brow. Our hero stares forward with a serious expression, exhaling sharply as if blowing away his last chance at peace. The dark-haired woman kneels on scorched earth beside a fallen dagger, gazing toward a distant figure hidden under a massive shield. A colossal serpent looms over a small human figure standing before it as the sun sets behind them in a bloody haze. The colossal serpent rears up with its maw wide open, roaring directly at the lone figure standing defiant before it. Our guy plugs his ears with both fingers and laughs loudly, his expression strained to the breaking point. A massive scaled serpent lowers its head, while a shadowed figure below demands it retreat right now. A glowing red eye with a vertical slit pupil opens between stone-like eyelids, casting an eerie light that chills the bone. Our guy stands before a colossal, gaping maw lined with jagged teeth as the creature roars silently around him, shaking his very core. The masked man stands rigidly with a glowing aura behind him, silently enduring the crushing pressure of an unseen force. A massive stone pillar crashes down toward our guy lying flat on his back, shaking the ground with explosive force. A massive scaled creature looms in the shadows with a glowing red eye as wind howls around it like a dying beast. Our hero stares downward with a smug smirk, his expression shadowed by warm light that hides his true intent. An ancient scroll inscribed with glowing runes floats amidst swirling starlight, as narration foretells the one who obtains the star of the mountain buried by the star. Thick iron chains lie coiled across a glowing red surface, while narration states the guardian obeys his master, and the contract remains secret. Our guy stares upward with a wide, startled eye as a finger presses firmly against his temple. Our guy faces a massive serpent whose head looms close with glowing eyes as the creature slithers forward to strike. Our guy gazes upward at the sunset with a solemn expression, declaring the star shows no mercy to those without qualification. The dark-haired man stares intently forward with a sharp, confident expression as he speaks in a low, dangerous tone. A lone figure walks into a swirling vortex of red and orange light while faint bubbles rise through the haze. A colossal scaled tail sweeps through the air with violent force, kicking up debris and blood near a silhouetted figure. A colossal serpent-like entity rises from the ground between two figures as a voice demands the star get rid of Wilhelm instead. Dark clouds drift lazily across a deep blue night sky, hiding whatever horror waits below. The dark-haired girl with red streaks stares forward in shock, mouth slightly open as an empty speech bubble hangs heavy above her. A stone dragon with a glowing red eye rests silently in the misty darkness, while an ominous sound echoes above its head. Our guy stands stiffly while the dark-clad woman presses close behind him as he demands she stay back. A cracked human skull rests on a stone floor marked with intersecting triangles, radiating ominous blue energy that makes the air hum. Our guy stands rigidly with fists clenched as he faces a dark figure, tension filling the dim atmosphere until it snaps. The robed figure presses their palms together in solemn prayer while speaking of fragments scattered across the continent. The dark-haired man holds a glowing, bald head in his hands with a tense expression as the object emits a soft, unsettling hum. Red glowing symbols flare beside our guy, whose face fills the view with wide eyes and a grim line drawn tight. A violent slash of orange and red energy tears through the air, scattering dark fragments across a stone floor. A character screams in agony as a searing orange energy blast engulfs their body with explosive force. A serpentine eye glows amber within scaled flesh, bathed in warm light streaking across its surface like liquid gold. A shadowed figure stands amid streaks of golden light and floating red fragments, their form blurred by raw energy. Our guy grips a glowing white orb tightly and shouts that it will all be his soon. A character stares intensely with furrowed brows and sweat beads forming, emitting a sharp gasp of pain. A human jawbone with teeth cracks under pressure, emitting a sharp snapping sound as fissures spread across the bone. Hands grip the sides of a cracked skull glowing with internal fire while dark energy crackles above like a storm. A lone figure stands with back turned, gazing upward at floating black clouds, labeled with titles as radiant golden light bursts behind them. The muscular man thrusts his hand forward as a blinding golden light erupts around him and shatters the air itself. A clenched fist glows with radiant energy as it strikes forward, sending shockwaves rippling through the air. Glowing energy lines pulse across a character's shoulder and neck, while a system message declares power increased with steps taken. Glowing energy crackles across a smooth surface as soft pink light fills the scene with an eerie calm. Our guy thrusts his hand forward with glowing energy crackling around his fingers as a bright flash erupts from his palm. A character's wide red eye dilates in shock with a bead of sweat rolling down their cheek as they realize the terrifying truth. Korean onomatopoeia suggests a soft sound or motion near a close-up of brown hair against a glowing background. Our guy stands braced against a blinding golden light erupting from behind him, while a massive hand looms over his shoulder. The blackened red-haired woman stares forward in stunned silence, wide eyes reflecting shock as a soft sound effect echoes in the void. Our guy's face twists in shock with his eye wide and mouth agape, as if he just heard something impossible. The dark-haired girl with red eyes stares forward in shock, a bead of sweat rolling down her cheek as she gasps about an impossibility. The dark-clad woman stands in a fiery haze, gazing upward at a shadowy figure on a throne amid swirling smoke. A character's hand clenches tightly into a fist against their dark hair, knuckles whitening from suppressed tension. Our guy grabs the dark-clad woman's shoulder as she turns away from him with a tense and urgent expression. A single tear rolls down the character's cheek as their wide eye reflects shock and lips part in silent dismay. A close-up of a character's lower face shows lips slightly parted with a blush on the cheek and a soft breathing sound. A dark-haired figure in armor kneels on the floor with head bowed, while the muscular man stands over them declaring he will serve. The young man turns his head slightly with eyes wide and lips parted in surprise as soft light filters through floating dust. Two figures stand frozen on cracked stone as a colossal scaled beast looms nearby with its glowing eye fixed on them. The scaled beast's glowing yellow eye narrows in fear with sweat beads forming on its hide as red flames rage behind it. Our hero points accusingly forward with his face contorted in rage, demanding to know who dared challenge him. A blue digital interface displays the completion of Main Quest 2 and announces rewards are being calculated for a unique result. Narration states that several combat-oriented constellations are beginning to take interest in the steps taken. The character stares forward with wide, unblinking eyes under harsh red lighting, while their expression freezes in silent dread. Silhouetted figures stand before a glowing red throne, while robed worshippers kneel in shadowed rows with heads bowed in reverence. Two robed figures lie on the stone floor with wide, terrified eyes as blue lightning crackles between them. Two figures freeze as a massive scaled creature with a glowing eye rises to dominate the chamber. A reptilian eye burns yellow while sweat beads on its brow beneath a crushing, threatening presence. Fury ignites in a man's eyes as he grits his teeth and thrusts a finger forward in a commanding gesture. A blue system screen flashes, Main Quest 2 complete, Hall of Fame updated, and 230 points locked in. Several combat-oriented constellations suddenly lock onto this character's every step. Bright sun blazes over city buildings under a blue sky scattered with clouds. The Angelus coffee storefront basks under a warm sky, its sign glowing fiercely above the entrance. Gracia and Randolph sit opposite each other while he insists he definitely ignored something, even if it was ignored. Two men stand with tense expressions and clenched fists as one remarks on the huge ruckus. Minchikois Delicious sips a drink through a straw, calmly announcing that she has found him. Minchikois Delicious sits between two large figures sipping from a cup, her face hidden deep in shadow. A woman with pink hair and purple eyes stares forward, her gaze solemn and unblinking. A glowing, translucent sleeve-like object floats amid swirling light trails and sparkling particles. A bald figure demands a high-quality item at a cheap price, while golden light erupts from his forehead. A hooded figure in dark armor lifts a man by the hair as the victim grimaces in pure pain. Randolph frowns and hums in contemplation, while Hugh Myung sips from a straw with an unreadable expression. Minchikois Delicious slams her fists onto the table in frustration, trembling with rage as two men watch silently. Minchikois Delicious grips her cheeks with manic excitement, wondering if he will snap up a cheap item in the auction hall. Kim Seo-yin holds up his phone with a nervous smirk, asking if the caller is reporting stalking while Hugh Myung stares tensely. Thick dark smoke shrouds a narrow corridor strewn with debris under dim ambient light. A glowing blue interface displays the updated Hall of Fame ranking with Randolph in first place at 230 points. A character stares at a glowing interface declaring their class acquisition ranking has changed to outside the rankings. Randolph stands over a fallen figure with glowing energy radiating from his torso and declares he will use the secret auction hall. A bloodied figure collapses backward in agony and screams as a glowing red blade slices through the air beside them. Randolph grips the hair of a fallen opponent with bloodied hands and declares he will rise back up even if he falls from the top ranks. A dark curved surface with red highlights tears rapidly across a tiled floor, kicking up debris. Two figures fall through a streaking blue void as system notifications declare they cleared the desert sanctuary and awarded a teleport book. A man strides forward with a confident smirk to guide the path, while internal narration announces a right turn ahead. A man gazes upward with a calm expression as streaks of light swirl around him, and a notification announces he has leveled up. A blue interface displays Randolph's character data listing his class as Star Successor with all base stats at level 3. A hand clenches tightly against soft fabric, fingers curled as if suppressing a tremor or holding back an urge. A man crouches with arms crossed and grins confidently under a purple-hued light as faint particles drift around him. A shirtless man with spiky hair trembles violently in fear, while a woman stands beside him with an unreadable expression. A figure draped in a flowing white hooded cloak stands with their back turned, surrounded by swirling blue magical energy. A blinding streak of white energy slashes diagonally across the dark space and shatters into fragments, sending debris flying. A glowing red eye with a vertical slit pupil opens within scaled reptilian skin, radiating an ominous predatory atmosphere. Glowing blue humanoid figures sprint across a dark corridor, while shattered glass fragments fly through the air below. A woman stands atop a massive creature's head, while a man beside her crosses his arms and asks what is happening. A woman with flowing black and red hair stands alert beside a tense man, her gaze fixed forward as wind stirs their clothes. A woman with dark hair and red eyes stares forward in shock, mouth slightly open as if gasping at something unseen. A hooded figure clutches their cloak tightly as wind howls around them, and their eyes narrow in quiet determination. A young man with dark hair and a white hood gazes forward with solemn eyes, remaining silent in the dimly lit space. A young woman with dark hair and a red ribbon gasps in shock as she stares at sharp black spikes protruding from her own hand. A colossal snake rears overhead with glowing eyes as two figures scramble across the floor in panic, while a voice declares they are counting on them. A massive scaled serpent looms forward with glowing red eyes and forked tongue extended as it prepares to strike. A hooded figure and a dark-haired companion sprint across debris-strewn ground, while distant voices cry out that a giant sea serpent has appeared. A woman lunges forward with a clenched fist toward a hooded figure and says that it will be fine with a fierce expression. A man stares intently forward with narrowed eyes and parted lips while his expression sharpens with focus. A hooded figure stares forward with narrowed eyes while a woman in dark attire runs toward them and shouts that she almost misunderstood. A man with brown hair and a white cloth draped over his shoulder lunges forward with intense speed, while shouting that he lifted something heavy. A boot slams down with force, kicking up dust and debris as it strikes the ground with violent impact. Two figures stand before a towering ancient archway under a starry night sky, while a voice states that activation requires time to complete. A girl with dark hair and red streaks stares upward in startled surprise and swallows nervously as a bead of sweat forms on her cheek. A cloaked man turns to face a woman with long dark hair and says they will be out of the desert area with a tense expression. A man with brown hair and a scarf stares intensely forward, while a woman behind him demands to know what he is doing with a shocked expression. A U-shaped fortified structure stands isolated in a dark, dusty expanse as wind sweeps across the barren ground and distant voices discuss pursuit toward the sanctuary. A young man with tousled brown hair stares intently forward with a tense and focused expression as he speaks in a low tone. A woman with black and red hair stares forward with wide eyes frozen in shock and demands to know who is there. A hand in a dark sleeve grips a red-handled weapon tightly as tension radiates from the knuckles, alongside a sharp sound. Gracia stands alert on a rooftop at night and grips a small object in her hand as snow falls around her. Glowing blue system messages float against a dark digital backdrop warning to log out safely and cautioning about the secret auction hall. A man lies sprawled on his back across rumpled sheets with arms stretched wide and eyes half-lidded in quiet exhaustion. A man jolts upright on a rumpled bed with eyes wide and mouth tense with alarm as he stares at his phone. A hand grips a smartphone with its screen dark and fingers curled tightly around the edges, as if bracing for something unseen. Randolph sits cross-legged on the floor holding a smartphone in his right hand and staring down at it with a serious expression. A man falls backward through the air screaming as a grotesque monster lunges upward, while text warns more monsters will come if destruction exceeds 10%. A man stands atop a curved surface with arms raised and shouts that Daisy in reality also concerns him as rain streaks down around him. A hand grips a smartphone tightly with a thumb poised over the screen, as an alert notification flashes with an urgent chime. Randolph stares at his smartphone with wide eyes and a parted mouth while holding the device up as if reading something shocking. A sunlit city street features a two-story building with Korean signage for Coffee Andy and an adjacent structure labeled skincare. A woman with long dark hair holds a phone to her ear and speaks while a man turns toward her with narrowed eyes. A female cashier stares in shock while handing over a card to an unseen customer as a male colleague glances back with wide-eyed alarm. A thumb presses down on a red button marked with a blue cross while an empty speech bubble signals imminent action. A woman with dark hair sits at a table holding a smartphone and stares down at the screen with a furrowed brow. A hooded figure sits slumped over a table with two drinks and head bowed, while a woman below closes her eyes and holds a cup. A woman with long dark hair leans forward eagerly over a desk and asks if the person before her is Kim Seo-yin. A woman with dark hair looks up at Hyun-myung and asks why he called her so urgently, while the man stands behind her with a tense expression. Hyun-myung leans forward over a desk, gripping its edge with one hand and resting the other on a laptop as he looks toward Kim Seo-yin. A character's glossy pink lips part slightly as if beginning to speak, while a speech bubble emerges from below. A woman with dark hair and blue eyes smiles gently while holding a light blue cup with a calm and inviting expression. A wide dark eye stares forward with dilated pupils and glistening highlights, while speech bubbles frame the gaze above and below. A character's narrowed eye stares intensely through the dark silhouette of a sword blade, conveying sharp focus and silent determination. A person with brown hair stands beside a note requesting one drink per person while demanding to know if they are being listened to. A woman crouches in alarm as a large boot presses down near her with eyes wide with fear and hands trembling at her sides. A woman with dark hair and a white blouse sits atop Hyun-myung with a furious expression and demands to know why he is here. Hyun-myung turns his head slightly with lips parted as if beginning to speak and an expression tense and focused. A woman's wide eye and gritted teeth convey shock as she whispers photo with her face flushed with tension and dread. A girl scrambles backward in panic with eyes wide and mouth open, while shouting that she needs someone to listen as heavy footsteps approach. Hyun-myung stares down at an unconscious figure, while a glowing blue notification announces experience accumulated and level up as he wonders why he feels strangely calm. A blond man in a green jacket stands with his back turned, listening to the distant hum of city life as he begins to say that was why. An attacker raises a knife to strike while shouting that he will let go with a face twisted in rage as the victim desperately grips his arm. A man screams in terror as a blade slashes toward his face with eyes wide, with panic and mouth agape in a silent shriek. A character's face contorts in anguish with an eye wide and trembling as a guttural scream tears from their throat. A man grimaces in shock as his arm is forcefully struck, sending a burst of impact through the air while he gasps in surprise. A hand grips the girl's hair and yanks her head back as she gasps in shock with one eye wide with fear. Hyun-myung grips a knife tightly with white knuckles and a tense face as he braces for impact. The spectacled man locks his grip on the knife, knuckles bleaching white as pure determination hardens his face for the strike. Fingers clamp around a box cutter with iron resolve while another hand steadies the wrist, the air thickening with the promise of a cut about to land. The man in the green tracksuit crushes the larger man's wrist, forcing a grimace and a scream as bones threaten to snap under the pressure. Behind those thick lenses, the bespectacled man's eye widens, snapping from calm to sudden, electric shock. The man in the green tracksuit launches a midair kick that sends his target screaming backward, while a woman watches the impact unfold. The girl with short brown hair stares upward, lips parted and expression frozen in absolute horror at whatever looms above her. The bespectacled man strokes his chin in deep thought while the young woman before him looks up, her eyes wide with anticipation. Shock ripples through the bespectacled man as a woman screams and clutches her head, right behind the figure smashing through the wall. A man with short blonde hair and a green cape stands tall, radiating raw energy that crackles outward from his very core. Rage twists the face of the man in the purple shirt as he raises a small blade high, while the bespectacled man stares forward with icy calm. Our hero drives a swift elbow into the attacker, sending him flying backward with a cry of pure surprise at the devastating impact. A fist hammers downward with explosive force, shattering the ground beneath in a violent burst of energy and flying debris. The girl with short brown hair stares forward, eyes wide and lips parted, completely caught off guard by the sudden turn of events. Crouching low with intense focus, the man in the green uniform spreads his fingers as debris floats around him, bracing for the incoming impact. Standing between two officers beside a police car, the man in the white shirt holds his hands behind his back, clearly restrained. With a nervous smile and wide eyes, the bespectacled man points to himself, asking if they actually mean him. The man in the green tracksuit declares to the two officers that he is the one who reported the stalker, the police car idling nearby. Scratching the back of his head with a flustered look, the bespectacled man stands beside a woman who watches him with wide, stunned eyes. The man in the black cap stares upward, eyes wide and lips parted, his entire expression locked in frozen shock. Thrusting an identification card forward, the woman in the business suit declares herself a reporter, her gaze burning with intensity. Two uniformed officers blurt out their surprise that CK is a major broadcasting network, while the other mutters that this is exactly what they needed. As the bespectacled man walks away alongside the woman in the business suit, another man observes them and remarks that she is also on TV. Speaking with sharp intent, the man in a cap freezes the two others behind him, their postures stiffening under the weight of tension. The woman in the business suit spins sharply toward the bespectacled man, clutching her chest as she demands he stop right now. Fingers press down hard on a white card with Korean text, gripping it firmly as if to prevent anyone from ever taking it away. Raising her finger, the girl with short brown hair recounts how monsters invaded on that day, recalling the beasts looming over the ruins. Staring intently at the small pink card in his hand, the bespectacled man furrows his brow in deep thought, humming contemplatively. Demanding to know if Hyun-myung is all right, the bespectacled man speaks while the girl with short brown hair watches with concern as three figures flee. Twisting her face in distress, the girl with long black hair grips the man's green-sleeved arm tightly, demanding to know where he went. The man in the green tracksuit flinches as a hand sharply slaps his arm, prompting an immediate, heated verbal reaction. Staring forward in shock, the woman in the business suit clutches her chest and demands that someone hand over their phone immediately. Holding up her smartphone to show an incoming call from Park Hyun-myung, the girl with short brown hair hesitates to answer amidst the heavy silence. Smiling and gesturing with an open hand while holding the phone, the woman in the business suit says she will not refuse then. The woman in the business suit stands with her eyes closed and head bowed, while the bespectacled man looks on silently from the side. Gritting her teeth into a manic grin, the woman's eyes widen with a mix of fury and terrifying excitement. Walking away from the subway entrance, the woman in the brown dress follows the man strolling ahead, their footsteps echoing softly on the pavement. Glancing over her shoulder with wide eyes while clutching her smartphone, the the woman in the business suit looks startled by something lurking behind her. Pressing a white smartphone against their ear, the character listens intently with lips slightly parted as tension hums through the quiet moment. A bright sun shines over city buildings beneath a cloudy sky, casting a deceptive calm over the scene. Mid-stride on the pavement, the figure in black stockings and high heels halts abruptly, marking a sudden stop against the blurred city backdrop. Atop a shattered golden construct, the cloaked figure stands as glowing swords rain from the bruised sky, casting long shadows over the battlefield below. From a high vantage point, the lone figure with white hair watches glowing cross-shaped projectiles rain down over the cityscape at sunset. Beside a bloodied body reaching out, a severed head lies still as a dagger rests nearby in the dark pool of gore. Lips parting slightly, the character exhales sharply, their breath visible in the cold air as a soft gasp escapes them. Under a stormy sky, a colossal dark structure tilts violently while two figures brace themselves on the fractured ground below. Standing rigidly with dual daggers, the woman in the blood-stained outfit hides her face in shadow as trembling lines radiate from her body. Glaring with a tense expression, the hooded man furrows his brow and sets his mouth in a grim line as he speaks. Above a row of cloaked figures, a bloodied hand grips a dagger midair while droplets fall from the blade, and the sky churns ominously. Swinging a glowing blade downward, the cloaked figure sends silhouettes falling backward through the air as red onomatopoeia explodes across the frame. Lunging forward with a dagger drawn, the woman in the blood-stained outfit collapses face down just as blue energy erupts from beneath a cracked slab. Within a dark archway, a swirling cosmic portal erupts, making characters recoil in shock while system messages declare that warp has been activated. Turning sharply to the side, the figure with dark spiky hair whips their head through the air as a sharp sound echoes nearby. Embracing the gray-haired man from behind with a sinister grin, the woman in the blood-stained outfit fills the air with shimmering cold energy. Lying down with a wide grin and a sharp, focused eye, the gray-haired man simply says yes. Standing in the foreground, the cloaked figure observes a group of robed individuals walking away into bright light, their forms casting long shadows. From a clenched fist, a burst of golden light erupts, illuminating surrounding skin and fabric as an onomatopoeic flash accompanies the impact. Wreathed in crackling golden energy, a fist surges forward and blasts outward, sending figures reeling back as the air shimmers with explosive force. Jagged Korean onomatopoeia explodes outward with a burst of golden energy, while a system message announces the use of the exclusive skill Star Pierce. Engulfed by searing flames, a figure screams in agony, eyes wide with terror as blood sprays into the air. Amidst a violent explosion of golden light and energy, the cloaked figure stands firm, their cape billowing outward as the shockwave radiates intensely around them. Glistening with a single tear, the character's wide eye reflects pain while smudges of dirt or blood mark their cheek, signaling deep emotional distress. Turning back with a smirk as blood splatters around him, the man in the purple hoodie demands something from the woman beside him. Holding daggers in both hands, the woman in the blue dress lunges forward, her eyes wide with shock as she moves through the air. Against pale skin, the character's lips curve into a soft, closed-mouth smile, with a shadowed shape above suggesting hair or headwear. Standing before a swirling cosmic vortex of blue and purple energy, the woman in the blood-stained outfit appears tiny against the vast celestial phenomenon. 3 glowing blue system messages announce the nullification of Isabella's curse, the establishment of warp connections, and the selection of Arcana as the destination. Sunlight bathes a city skyline featuring stone fortifications and a domed palace under a blue sky with drifting clouds. On a light blue background, a tip states that Arcana is a city where materialism has reached its peak and warns those without wealth. Grabbing the wrist of a surprised, bandaged figure, the bald man in a loincloth yanks him forward through a stone doorway as he recoils. Leaning out of the carriage window, the man with the beard speaks while the cloaked figure stands beside the vehicle under bright daylight. Arms crossed, the man in the white cloak stands still while the woman beside him gasps in awe, exclaiming that everything is extravagant. Grinning with a smug expression, the woman with black hair and red eyes holds up a tied cloth pouch as she chuckles softly. Staring intently at a dark, rounded object in front of him, the young man with brown hair keeps a serious expression as sweat drips from his brow. Raising a bulging sack above her shoulder, the woman with black hair and red eyes stares upward, her wide eyes showing pure shock. Smiling nervously with sweat beading on his temple, the young man with brown hair murmurs about 10 slaves. Loaves of bread rest on a shelf above a tag reading 50 grams. Clenching his fist and shouting, the man with the white scarf faces a sweating woman, his expression fierce with determination. In front of a glowing casino sign, a hand gives a thumbs-up gesture while the sound effect echoes nearby. Wide red eyes, flushed cheeks, and a bead of sweat near the mouth fill the close-up of the character's face, conveying total shock. Standing with arms crossed beneath a glowing casino sign, The man in the white cloak smiles confidently as his cape billows slightly. Smirking confidently while saying not to worry, the young man with brown hair radiates calm assurance. A glowing blue interface displays that the hidden trait blessing of gold has been activated. Sunlight glints off a dome tower punching up above the stone buildings below. Gold coins pile into a mountain as the text screams that money alone decides everything here. Crowds swarm beneath the glowing Hudson Casino sign, while a beam of light pierces straight through the night sky. A man in a beige suit stands rigid, his brow furrowed and jaw locked tight. A woman stumbles forward in pure shock, screaming that 10,000 gold is the price. A woman cups her hand beside her mouth, whispering a secret warning straight into a man's ear. A woman demands someone move aside for blocking the line, while a man mutters about beggars wasting his time. A hand thrusts glowing blue energy forward, making a suited man recoil and gasp that something is burning him. A hand grips a glowing blue gem, declaring that this should be more than enough. A blue information screen flashes the Fairy Queen's tier item and its power to break equipment limit restrictions. Character grinds their teeth in tension as sweat drips down their face. A man strides forward with a smug grin, carrying a girl and demanding VIP treatment right now. A man holds a woman with red eyes close as she looks up at him with startled, wide eyes. A man stands with arms crossed, declaring that the sanctuary is worth at least 1 million gold. Our boy smirks confidently, thinking he can pay back the deposit once he wins some money. A golden disc spins rapidly, jagged teeth biting into colored panels and sending sparks flying everywhere. A white ball rolls across the numbered red and black slots of a spinning roulette wheel. A white orb rests in a carved stone channel, vibrating slightly as it rolls forward. A dealer leans over a roulette table piled with chips while onlookers react in shock to his massive winnings. Our guy sits confidently behind towering stacks of poker chips and declares that he just added 1 million gold. A man with a goatee bares his teeth in a snarl, his brow furrowed with intense anger. A woman smiles excitedly and exclaims that they are rich now while a man asks if it is actually his money. A man in a vest bows deeply over a counter, declaring that no one is entering the casino anymore. A robed figure stands in a dimly lit tavern, while another man demands that there is a serious issue. A suited man and a robed woman cower in fear as towering figures loom over them with clenched fists. A muscular man lounges in a barber chair with arms crossed, while a woman stands beside him in confident posture. A character with dark hair and glowing red eyes stares intensely as blood drips from their temple. A woman halts a man's movement by gripping his shoulder, demanding that he stop right now. A man with dark hair and furrowed brows stares intently forward, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. Our dude bares his teeth in a sharp, confident grin as he looks off to the side. A man in a vest sits at a desk, staring intently at a glowing blue gemstone resting on the table. A hand reaches upward as radiant blue energy swirls around it, illuminating the air with glowing particles. The character's wide eye stares in shock, mouth agape, as a glowing blue interface hovers just above their brow. A large, faceted blue gem floats and radiates bright light amidst swirling purple energy and sparkling particles. The character's eye widens in shock as a hand slams against their shoulder, marking the impact with a sudden gasp. A man in a vest and mask sits at his desk and asks what it is when knocking sounds echo from the doorway. A man with a mustache stares forward with wide, startled eyes as white shock lines radiate from his face. Character grins widely and bares sharp teeth in a menacing expression. Two individuals sit opposite each other on white sofas, their heads bowed in total despair. A man sits with his hands clasped over his knee, while a woman stands behind him with a concerned look. A man in a vest sits rigidly at the table, staring intently across from another person. A woman in a brown dress stands with her back turned, while a seated man asks if he might ask something. A hand grips fabric tightly, while a voice demands to know what this means. A character's wide brown eye stares in shock as they gasp that something impossible just occurred. The man with the mustache stands with his eyes closed, stating that he collects rare talismans. A man in a black tank top sips from a white mug with closed eyes and a calm expression. A man with a mustache and tied back hair bares his teeth in a sneer, glaring off panel with pure contempt. A woman with dark hair and a scarred face lunges forward with clenched fists, shouting that she will not let him escape. A man sits with arms crossed before a teacup, while a woman behind him reacts with wide-eyed shock to a loud thud. A man in a vest and bow tie leans forward, declaring that the mansion is located in the center of Arcana. Wooden bookshelves filled with books and files stand against a wall, while a speech bubble declares that even the speaker could not do it. A hand grips the edge of a table beside a white teacup, while an onomatopoeic sound effect emphasizes the sudden stillness. A man with tousled blonde hair and sharp eyes stares forward with a confident smirk and arms crossed. A character's closed eye and furrowed brow convey deep concentration, while a speech bubble emerges from below. A glowing diamond-shaped item hovers amid floating debris and chains, while an unseen voice explains that non-combat classes need it. A man stares with wide, intense eyes and demands to know if his actions were meant to be acknowledged by Serengeti. A brown eye stares intensely through dark bangs, the gaze sharp and unwavering in quiet determination. A woman with long dark hair tied back turns her head slightly and smiles warmly, her eyes bright with quiet joy. A cloaked figure stands silhouetted atop a jagged peak, with a sword planted in the rock while soldiers gaze upward. A silver-haired figure in a blood-splattered blue cloak screams in agony as both of her legs are severed. Our hero sits barefoot at a desk in a dim room, focused on something off-panel. A white-haired warrior in armor kneels with their head bowed before floating swords, while figures are violently thrown backward. A woman with gray hair smiles warmly while holding an open locket containing a portrait of a man. A system notification declares that Serengeti's necklace has been obtained. A bespectacled man with messy hair and stubble rests his cheek on his hand and asks what this is. The title Serengeti's necklace appears above text describing a precious necklace holding a photo of Serengeti and her fiancé Hudson. A man with stubble and glasses bares his teeth in a strained grimace while speaking with tight tension. A smiling character with closed eyes and gray hair radiates warmth with a serene and content expression. A golden locket hangs open and reveals a portrait of a man with a mustache, while digital distortions streak its surface. A man with a mustache stares forward in wide-eyed shock, his mouth slightly agape as if frozen by sudden realization. A man sits with arms crossed at a table beside a steaming cup, while an unseen speaker declares that someone existed in this world long before them. A hand points upward with a sharp gesture, while someone demands that others know. A man slumps in his chair with arms crossed, while another man seated nearby demands to know if she claims to be a star-bearer. Our guy with dark hair and sharp features stares forward with a faint, confident smirk curling his lips. The character's wide eyes and furrowed brows convey shock or alarm, with a single bead of sweat rolling down their temple. Two figures sit on opposite sofas with their heads bowed in silence, while a third person stands nearby watching them. A man in a suit grips the back of a chair tightly and questions whether this is truly his life story. A man's eye narrows with sharp intensity while his brow furrows as he glares forward with cold determination. A cloaked knight in silver armor stands over a fallen comrade whose back is ruptured and bleeding. A character's mouth gapes wide in shock or scream with eyes squeezed shut above, conveying raw panic or horror. A man with a mustache stares intently at an open pocket watch he holds in his hand while sweat beads on his temple. A hand holds a small round mirror reflecting the smiling face of a woman with silver hair and closed eyes. A woman stands behind a sofa while two men sit opposite each other at a coffee table and converse in a warmly lit room. A stern man with a mustache turns his head sharply, emitting a sharp intake of breath as his expression hardens. A man's eyes widen in shock or alarm as he turns his head sharply with a tense and startled expression. A man in a vest leans forward over a table with a teacup and asks what was said while another figure stands nearby. A man stands frozen in terror as shadowy figures with glowing red eyes loom behind him. A man with a mustache stares forward in wide-eyed shock with a bead of sweat rolling down his cheek as he processes something alarming. A blond man in a trench coat sits with legs crossed, holding a smartphone and staring forward with a stern expression. A man wielding a spear leaps from a rocky outcrop toward a monstrous figure midair while debris scatters around them. A plain surface displays the text report by Kim Hana above a horizontal line. A blond man in a high-collared coat sits at a desk with his back turned while another character observes him from behind. Sunlight flares over a dense city skyline of high-rise and mid-rise buildings, while an unseen voice suggests bringing the reporter to this location. Our hero lunges forward with a spear aimed at a massive, shadowy beast looming above him, amidst swirling dust and debris. A blond man rests his chin on his hand and smirks with narrowed blue eyes while exuding quiet confidence. Our dude with tousled brown hair stares downward with a furrowed brow and narrowed eyes, his expression tense and brooding. Our brown-haired hero stares forward, silent rage boiling over as his face flushes and teeth grind. The vested man leans hard over the table, demanding to know exactly what was said. Terror explodes in wide eyes as shadowy figures with glowing red irises loom menacingly behind the young man. Fluffy white clouds drift lazily across a bright blue sky, hanging innocent above the city buildings. The bespectacled man freezes with a fork hovering near his mouth, staring tensely at the steak like it's a bomb. A man and woman share easy smiles, chatting over wine glasses in the sun-drenched cafe. Our guy demands intel on the 8 heroes while his weary companion sits back, arms crossed tight. The brown-haired man with black-rimmed glasses locks his gaze forward, mouth slightly agape in focus. The short-haired woman flashes a smile while gripping a knife, even as a translucent figure looms ominously behind her. Shock ripples through the woman in the white shirt. She grips her fork and eyes go wide. The blue-haired man and the woman in pink glare daggers at each other, arms crossed in a standoff. The dark-haired woman stands tall with arms crossed and fury etched on her face, looking down at the prone man. The bespectacled man snaps his head around, accusing the other of flirting and demanding they acknowledge the meeting. Her eye goes wide and teeth grit in shock as she insists this isn't just some profile photo. The woman leans in close, whispering that they should switch tables if he's feeling uncomfortable. The man with glasses presses a small microphone to his lips, his expression tense and ready. Teeth crunch together as a hammer slams into a character's cheek, the impact visibly snapping their head back. The blue-haired man stands looming behind the blonde, fists clenched and brow furrowed in pure anger. The blue-haired man grinds his teeth and narrows his eyes, letting the rage simmer just under the surface. Two characters sit locked in tension across a small table, while others fill the nearby seats, oblivious. The bespectacled man touches his chin, trouble clouding his features as he recalls the woman crying and begging. The brown-haired character with glasses narrows one eye, staring intently forward with laser focus. The woman in the pink blouse stands confident, arms crossed and a smirk playing on her lips. The blue-haired man looms over the bespectacled man, his face twisted into a mask of pure rage. The woman in the white shirt slams her hands onto the table, shouting at the two men to stop. Two figures stand rigid with tense, clenched fists while a seated man twists around to look back. The blue-haired man thrusts his hand forward, sending stacks of banknotes exploding into the air. A wide, dark eye stares intensely forward, the view partially cut off by a wooden frame. The brown-haired man cracks an open palm against the blue-haired man, sending money flying everywhere. The girl with the pink clip stares forward, eyes burning with fury and arms crossed tight. The blue-haired man clenches his teeth and stares ahead, narrow eyes hiding a storm of suppressed rage. Shock freezes the brown-haired girl as a hand suddenly reaches out toward her. A character's eye goes wide and trembles in panic as a blade slices the air right beside it. The blue-haired man kicks the seated man's head back, sending him slumping lifelessly over the table. The man with glasses declares flatly that the person standing before him doesn't look innocent either. A character's face twists into a furious snarl, eyes blazing with white-hot intensity. The blue-haired man clutches his head in agony, teeth gritted and eyes wide with pain. The hooded figure slams a glowing hand onto the purple-haired person's head, shouting for them to stop right now. A hand trembles violently, fingers curled tight as if holding onto sanity itself. The woman screams in sheer shock, mouth gaping wide and eyes bulging with panic. A large hand presses down hard on the blue-haired character's head, forcing them straight to the ground. Fear floods the blue-haired character's wide eyes as they stare in absolute shock. A character in black clothing grips a golden object tightly, pressing it hard against dark fabric. Intense light shatters the stone structure into fragments, sending debris flying outward in a deadly spray. The blonde character recoils violently as a blinding purple energy blast slams into him. A close-up catches a character's eye behind glasses going wide with shock as soft light glows across their cheek. The man in the white shirt demands to know what that was while the man behind him mutters in disbelief. The man in the beige hoodie lunges forward, charging straight at the blue-haired warrior who braces for impact. The man with dark hair and intense eyes glares forward, brow furrowed in deadly concentration. The masked figure with purple hair launches forward, cutting through a blinding vertical slash of light. The man in the beige sweater flails helplessly midair, while a cloaked figure looms terrifyingly above. A man lies on his back, wide unblinking eyes and an open mouth frozen in pure terror. Myung slams his fists against the tiled wall, shouting at himself to get a damn hold of himself. The blue-haired man with armored gloves clenches his fists tight as purple energy crackles wildly around him. A vertical bar chart displays levels 1 through 10, shifting through a color gradient against a starry backdrop. A blue interface flashes, revealing Randolph's class's star successor alongside his stats and talent. Two character portraits appear beside horizontal progress bars, each labeled with specific level ranges. Yoongjinwoo tumbles through empty space in silhouette, thrown backward into the void. The spearman stands rigid, eyes wide and fist clenched as blue energy crackles dangerously around his arm. A man stands as a stark black silhouette against a blinding white void, fists clenched at his sides. The brown-haired man with glasses stares forward with a tense expression, while dark spiky marks hover ominously above his head. The woman with long black hair wraps her arms around the tall man in dark armor, embracing him at the waist. The blue-haired man turns sharply away from the woman, his expression tense and eyes narrowed in conflict. The bespectacled character with purple hair stares upward in wide-eyed shock, pressed helpless against a surface. The gray-haired man walks away claiming he's fine, leaving the woman crouched on the floor behind him. The woman with a pink hairpin shouts at the man in glasses, who raises his hand defensively to block her words. A character's intense eye narrows beneath dark hair as a glowing blue blade materializes below. Several individuals get thrown off their feet, stumbling in panic as the ground violently shakes beneath them. The bespectacled man stares forward with a tense expression, while the woman beside him demands to know what he's doing. Jagged cracks spiderweb rapidly across a pale surface as onomatopoeic symbols burst outward with force. The woman in the white blouse recoils midair as massive mechanical jaws crash down all around her. The man in glasses forcefully clamps his hand over the woman's mouth to silence her scream. The man with wild eyes and gritted teeth lunges forward as a massive dark energy sphere crashes down behind him. The man with dark hair lunges forward while another man screams that they have to run right now. Massive tentacles crash through the restaurant, sending patrons scrambling in absolute panic. The man in glasses and the woman with wide, fearful eyes stare upward in stunned shock. The man in blue armor holds a woman protectively as large pipes crash down all around them. The blue-haired man in dark robes recoils in terror screaming that Jinwoo must do something immediately. The blonde character in armored gear watches in awe as a jet engine ignites with explosive blue energy. The man with dark hair and glasses screams in profile, his mouth stretched wide in horror. The cloaked figure hurls a glowing blue orb of energy forward with devastating explosive force. The blue-haired man in a dark cloak recoils mid-lunge as blood sprays violently across his form. A dark figure stands amid glowing cyan energy, partially obscured by jagged blue fragments swirling around. The man in dark armor unleashes a powerful blue energy slash that shatters the ground beneath him. A figure in dark clothing swings a glowing blue blade, cleanly severing the opponent's head. A man's face contorts into a wild, manic grin, eyes wide and teeth bared in madness. The woman in the white shirt stares with wide eyes and an open mouth, exclaiming in total confusion. Blood sprays violently across a dark red surface, painting the scene in crimson. The man with purple hair and glasses lunges forward, wielding a glowing cyan blade. A character's eye narrows with sharp intensity under a dark headband as red shadows creep across their face. A dark winged silhouette falls through swirling crimson mist while embers drift upward around it. The man with purple hair grimaces in pain as dark red tendrils grip his face tightly. A figure with pale hair and a dark hood stares into a glowing red eye floating in the crimson void. The masked warrior in dark armor stands defiantly beneath a colossal, glowing eye, demanding to know who killed his children. A light blue background flashes with white text announcing that an elite monster named Cheed Mamba has appeared. A blue screen displays the recommended raid party size for level 6, 20 people. Purple-haired character screams as burning tendrils claw across their face, unleashing unbearable agony. A glowing red eye materializes in the mist behind the lavender-haired figure, radiating pure malevolence. Red energy swirls around the armored man as he demands to know who killed his children. A system notification flashes, announcing the arrival of an elite monster named Cheed Mamba. The blue interface warns that the recommended raid party size for level 6 is 20 people. The hooded figure trembles in terror while a grinning shadow commands them to kill. Jagged blue energy crackles around the lone figure's weapon as they declare that all of them will fall. The man collapses forward, clutching his chest and gasping about the sudden assault causing such agony. The shadowed figure states they cannot see through the dense red fog obscuring their vision. The man recoils in shock as a glowing blue blade erupts from his chest and blood drips from his mouth. A glowing red eye stares intensely from the shadows amidst dark strands of hair. A monstrous maw lined with jagged teeth gapes open, vibrating with a low guttural sound. A system notification declares that Cheed Worm's blood has activated the hallucination status ailment. A blue energy blast strikes the man's face, making him scream in shock and stammer about what is happening. Dark blood splatters violently across a pale surface in jagged bursts. Explosive force tears across the character in blue clothing, inflicting a violent impact on their body. The man with glowing red eyes slashes downward, sending arcs of blood flying while another man screams in disbelief. Dark blood splatters across the blue-haired figure's face and surges upward from below with violent intensity. The shadowy figure collapses backward with a sharp gasp as towering legs loom over them. The young man lunges forward, brandishing a large sword and demanding that someone come out. A monstrous maw lined with jagged teeth snaps shut, swallowing light with violent impact. The man stands beneath a colossal clawed hand descending from above, while dark clouds exhale labored breaths. Cheed Mamba roars in triumph with its maw wide open as manic laughter echoes above it. Cheed Mamba looms over the boy with bared fangs, reaching down with a clawed hand while growling. The blonde-haired character stares forward with narrowed eyes and a grim expression under harsh red light. The young woman raises her hand to her mouth in shock, demanding to know where In-myung is. The young woman stands tense with guilt, whispering that she is sorry. The young woman faces away, gazing into the crimson sky and whispering the name Hyun-myung in uncertainty. A violent explosion erupts, sending flying debris and radiant shockwaves tearing through the air. The blonde swordsman lunges downward with fierce concentration as red energy surges around the blade's impact point. The man grimaces under the strain of an unseen force, saying that transforming does not guarantee success. Terror reflects in the character's wide eye as they realize they must know the attack patterns. Cheed Mamba lunges forward with claws extended in a violent burst of motion. Cheed Mamba snarls in rage with its mouth wide open as dark energy swirls above its head. The young man leaps through the air with a sword raised high, wreathed in a brilliant golden aura. Raw rage surges through the young man, twisting his face in fury with bared teeth. The warrior lunges forward with a glowing blade, shattering dark tendrils in a burst of radiant light. Our hero grits his teeth in pain as a boot stomps down, racing to predict the next dodge pattern. The young man stands with his back to the viewer as a massive explosion of dark energy and blood erupts behind him. The blonde swordsman lunges forward with his blade, extended while an unseen voice warns that contact will inflict a status ailment. A violent burst of dark blood explodes outward in all directions, accompanied by the sound of a scream. Debris and light throw the blonde swordsman backward as he cries out in pain. The blonde swordsman braces himself against a monstrous entity in a crimson haze, panting heavily amidst flying debris. A monstrous multi-tentacled creature roars in rage and surges forward, its writhing limbs whipping through the air. A shadowy figure with glowing red eyes snarls in rage, letting out a guttural growl while drool drips from its fangs. The character pants through clenched teeth, eyes narrowed in strain or fear against a crimson backdrop. The man stares intently at the glowing blue gem in his palm with an expression of shock and disbelief. The red-armored warrior braces against a glowing blue energy field as streaks of golden light radiate outward from the impact. The red-armored warrior stands enveloped in a swirling vortex of golden light, their chest radiating intense power. The red-armored warrior lunges forward with a glowing sword as system notifications announce the activation of Michaela's celestial dragonborn set and Hermes' shoe's swiftness option. The red-armored warrior stares forward with intense eyes as golden light flares around his armor, radiating an aura of overwhelming power. System text reveals the stats of Hermes' shoes and Fairy Queen's tier granting swiftness as a red boot stands beneath cascading blue light. A massive swirling vortex of energy strikes the silhouetted warrior holding a sword, sending debris flying through the air. A shadowy figure swings a curved blade downward with explosive force, while a wide-eyed character stares upward in frozen terror. The red-armored warrior lunges forward with a blade, shattering the air into glowing fragments as streaks of light explode outward. A red-armored boot slams into the ground, shattering stone and sending debris flying upward in a violent impact. The cloaked figure lunges forward with a crackling blue blade, surrounded by swirling golden light and explosive motion. Golden light radiates from the character's forehead as their eyes blaze with intense energy and focus. The cloaked figure stares down in shock as a smaller armored character tumbles backward through the air, clutching a sword. Chidmamba lunges forward violently, baring its fangs in a snarl as dark energy erupts behind it. Multiple glowing blades impale a muscular torso, while blood gushes from the wounds and red impact characters explode across the flesh. The red-armored warrior leaps forward midair with blade raised high, striking toward a shadowed opponent amidst explosive light. The red-armored warrior lunges forward violently, explosive motion blur conveying overwhelming force and speed. The red-armored warrior narrows their eye with lethal focus during an instant of violent motion. A massive dark limb slams into the stone-skinned humanoid's chest, sending it flying backward through the air with an explosive impact. A blinding force hurls the red-armored warrior backward through the air, limbs flailing and debris scattering around them. The red-armored warrior collapses forward under a blinding explosion of light and debris as purple impact symbols streak across the scene. The masked figure grits their teeth in agony as blood sprays from their mouth, and their eyes widen with shock and pain. The red-armored warrior lunges forward with sword drawn and face twisted in a snarl as explosive red energy radiates outward. The red-armored warrior slashes forward with a curved blade, sending shockwaves rippling through the air amid swirling crimson energy. Chidmamba roars in fury, unleashing a torrent of blood-red energy that engulfs the battlefield as an unseen voice screams at a rat-like bastard. The character's eye widens in shock or realization, reacting to something terrifying or unexpected. A shadowy figure hovers amid swirling crimson energy and crackling light, radiating overwhelming power. A shadowy figure unleashes a massive red energy wave, declaring that there is no way the target could dodge it. A figure stands before a swirling vortex of crimson energy, its form obscured by shadow and motion. A swirling vortex of crimson energy and sparks churns violently in the air, radiating intense heat. The red-armored warrior surges forward with sword raised as blue energy streaks radiate outward, while a system notification declares the activation of the celestial dragonborn synergy effect with swiftness. A monstrous eye widens in shock as rain streaks across its glowing iris, conveying sudden terror. The red-armored warrior bends forward with exhaustion, gasping heavily as sweat beads form near his face. A massive armored figure looms in shadow with glowing red eyes, radiating silent menace against a blood-red backdrop. The red-armored warrior unleashes a blinding golden explosion of energy, declaring this is their only chance to win. Chidmamba bares its jagged teeth in a furious snarl, eyes wide with primal rage as dark energy crackles above its head. Chidmamba collapses backward with its head, exploding in a spray of blood and arms flung wide as golden light rains down from above. A figure drives a bloodied sword downward with both hands into an unseen target, splattering crimson across the frame. The masked figure with narrowed eyes stands motionless as blood sprays across the frame with an unreadable expression.